Welcome to Get Real, How to Live a More Authentic Life, with psychologist and author of over 75 books, Dr. Barry Weinhold. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Get Real, How to Live a More Authentic Life with Dr. Barry Weinhold. Dr. Weinhold, how are you today?
Well, I'm grateful as usual.
Excellent, excellent. I love your shirt. I really like. Kind of matches my Fitbit.
Oh, it does. Yeah, right.
Nice. Yeah, we have wonderful complementary colors today.
Well,
Um,
I had my colors done for me once. And
oh yeah,
what they do is they drape different colors as a shawl over your front, and then look at how it affects your face. Certain colors will drain color out of your face. Others will add color to your face. This was one of my colors.
nice. I've always been told blue and yeah, like a salmon.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Salmon or orange or anything, or peach, anything that.
I don't think that I've ever worn an orange shirt in my entire life, at least my adult life.
I just
So
bought a new one.
excellent. So, all right, what are we talking about today?
Well, I'm going to take one of my top 20 list of badass, stupid psychological beliefs and talk about them. Because
Excellent.
it's a big one and it fits the theme that we've been talking about.
All
And
right.
this one is the one that says, I've been victimized by other people and by the government. And,
Ooh,
and I do think that we have a culture with victim consciousness of running amok. I mean, obviously there are some people who are legitimate victims, and we know from their racial identity, their religious identity, and other forms of identities, they are sometimes victimized. But there are people who shouldn't be using that as a way of avoiding responsibility, and that's what victimization usually does. It's a way that people have decided that they are basically not going to be responsible for their behavior. So they claim that somehow other people are causing them to do what they're doing, and they claim victimhood, and it's a common cop out, I think. And so actually, most mass shooters are self-proclaimed victims. You'll hear that, meaning these people who kill with an automatic weapon kill 5, 10, 15, 20 people, and their explanation was that they felt like a victim, and they acted out their victimhood on other people in that way. That's crazy, absolutely crazy. And so they project their anger and rage, that mostly it's about themselves. I think many of these mass shooters are people who hate themselves. They're filled with a lot of shame, and shame is I think, a big issue for a lot of people to deal with. And one of the ways that many people deal with shame is that they claim other people are causing them to do things that make them a victim. And so I think that basically the way I deal with shame with my clients, when I see them for the first time, I know that if they've come into therapy or they've been in therapy before, they're probably carrying a lot of shame about what's wrong with them. I mean, shame is basically a definition of that is there is something wrong with me that I can't correct. I'm fundamentally flawed. Now, obviously, there's other things that can cause that. People who grow up in a strict religious community who were subjected to original sin can carry a lot of shame because of that. And so what I do when I see a client for the first time, I look them right in the eye and I point at them and I say, I want you to know I don't think there is anything wrong with you, and I'm not here to fix you. Let's get that straight. Now I'll tell you what I can do instead of that. And so that's how we start our sessions. And some of my clients have reported that in itself was the biggest thing that changed the way they thought about themselves, and the biggest thing that helped them change their life. And so I'm going to continue to do that, and I thoroughly believe that. And unfortunately, the mental health system tends to shame people because they give them a diagnosis. Now they have a name for something that's wrong with them, and that doesn't help them get rid of their shame. It only reinforces the fact that there's something wrong with me and I have to get fixed by somebody else. And the topic of my newest book, which I'll talk about later in the month, is related to that. So anyway, I'd like to really talk about kind of the things that people do that identify them as victims, and there are all kinds of victims. So I think I made a list of the victims. There they are, and gave them names. So the first one is the patient, and that's a person who becomes a victim to their health or their lack of. And I remember having an aunt who, every time you'd see her, you'd say, "Well, how are you, Aunt Emma?" She'd say, "Oh, I'm just not so good. I have this going on and that going on." And then you almost were sorry you'd asked, because it was clear that they felt victim to their body functions, the diseases or injuries that they had. And fortunately, was able to get her to change all that. And I had an opportunity to do breath work with her. And in that breathwork session, she shed all of her victim behaviors. And so it's not a permanent disorder and can be changed. The second one, the prisoner, the victim, acts as if some way they believe they are being held hostage, or they're at the mercy of other people, uh, other people's desires, manipulation, demands, or control, and it makes them feel entitled to revenge and exploitation and vigilante justice and anger. So you have a lot of the school shooters who come under that category. They feel sort of a prisoner to maybe the standards of society that they can't meet as a adult, or they feel in some ways that they're being manipulated or controlled, and so they act out that anger by shooting other people. Then you have the long-suffering victim who pretends to be a victim of life circumstances, and therefore they think they're entitled to some sympathy or attention or some support from other people. And so and like my aunt, when you ask her how she was, and I would get all this litany of all the things that were wrong with her and all the aches and pains she had. That's the kind of the long sufferer as well, who tends to gain attention and support and sympathy for having some circumstance that they define as being victimized, or maybe they feel victimized by life circumstances or some action that other people took that they felt victimized. Then the third one, actually, I misnumbered those. You see, the robot, the fourth, would be the fourth one, and this person feels victimized by their internal programming and their false beliefs. Uh, they feel that they're entitled to be disconnected, they're entitled to be judgmental of others, and they tend to often act superior to others and act as if they have earned the right by being a victim to be treated differently from the way other people are treated, to be treated special in some way. And that's a form of victimhood. And then the weakling person is a person who acts overwhelmed by everything in life and by any demands that are put on them, and so they often respond as someone who's helpless, overwhelmed, and also handicapped in some way, that they can't do what is expected of them as a responsible adult, and this leads them to isolation, confusion, fear, or hopefully one of their hopes is that they could get rescued by others through someone's help and advice. They can somehow make their life a little better. But usually, any efforts to rescue them are tend not to work because they're pretty entrenched in this role. And then the next one is the crusader. This is a, I mean, we see a lot of this in politics right now. These are victims of loneliness, negativity, and self-hatred, and they believe they're entitled to be to recruit others into being victims with them. And our last president was very good at this, of recruiting people. By being the biggest victim in town, he recruited other victims to join him in that quest to also be the biggest victim in their town. And so these are also the doomsayers. They say everything is wrong with the world, and this also includes people who go down the rabbit hole and get very much involved in conspiracy theories. These are the people who are crusaders. They're trying to recruit other people to their belief system, and it's usually a victim belief system. And then you have the doormat, the person who tends to act in ways in which they've been taken advantage of by others, overworked and used and abused. I had a client who, the first two sessions, he did nothing but bitch and complain about work and his wife and everybody else in his life, the government, about how they were making him, taking advantage of him and making life hard for him. Fortunately, in the third session, he broke through his anger to sadness and he started weeping. When I asked him about what happened, when I said people with your kind of anger often had a really rough childhood. How was your childhood? When I said that, he looked at me and he just started weeping. And he just broke through from the anger to the sadness and the loss that he felt. And then that mobilized him to do something, and he's cleaned up his life completely. He went to his wife and he apologized for his anger towards her. He went to his boss and apologized. Said, I used to get angry at work a lot, and I've got that under control. And he went to his mother, and now he's going to talk to his father about what he needs from them to get rid of any anger he has toward them. And so he broke through, but he started out as a person who would be probably considered a doormat in the category I have here. The hider. These victims often hide their inadequacies and their lack of confidence, and they feel entitled to do this, to hide or withdraw, and also they hide from their true feelings, and they judge others, and then they try to get people to understand them because they feel so misunderstood, and they have to you have to almost read their mind because you have no idea what's going on with them. And then you have a kind of victim, which I call the, I don't have him on here. I have missed the one there, called the dummy. This victim pretends to lack intelligence. Well, I just don't know much about that. And maybe you guys are so much smarter than I am. I mean, you've heard that kind of victim behavior. And it's often a kind of a cynical victim too, because they really try to mock education and people who they think are smarter than they are. And then the cohort or accomplice, these act as if they're a victim of others, the influence of other people, their pressure and their manipulation. And this allows them to believe that they're entitled to some kind of leniency or immunity from the rules and responsibilities of adulthood that others have to follow. That somehow they try to convince you that the rules don't apply to them because of something in their background or in their life that makes it impossible for them to meet these expectations. And then we have the user, which is a victim of scarcity. They feel victim of the wants of others, the deficiency, and the robbery that they see in society. Like they complain about high gas prices or school fees or other kinds of what they call robberies. And this kind of victim will use terms like, that's highway robbery to do that. And they're just stealing from us, like stealing an election. So they feel entitled to charity and to ask favors and for aid and assistance from others, as well as to blame others who they think and perceive are better than they are. And so it's a one down position where they try to get power by being one down to others. And then there's a righteous set of victims, and you probably have met some of them. They feel entitled to and almost require you to respect them and to reward them and to give them compliments and adulation. These are people who've lacked much validation growing up. And as adults, they're still seeking this validation from other people. And they do it from a victim role. They're victim of the trials and tribulations of life and the misfortunes that happen to them. And so that kind of victim is very common. And then there's also what I call the inner demon victim. And they have some general symptoms. And I call them the inner demon shadow victim because often these people don't even know that they're being a victim. And they act as if to accuse them of being a victim would be something inaccurate because they're not a victim. So they often, the shadow victim behavior is that these are the people who lack energy and have a strong draw towards addictions, and they have a constant need to distract themselves, blame others, and complain often and loudly, and withdraw from others, tending toward more inaction and passivity, or sometimes they go the other way, and they become very dominant and try to control other people's behavior. And then their second one, their emotions are often they feel angry, frustrated, hurt, depressed, guilty, shameful, worthless, and actually hating themselves and other people. These feelings are clues to understand what's going on with the shadow victim. Their storyline is a little different than other victims. They're stuck in a storyline that whatever happens, it's not going to be their fault. It's going to be somebody else's fault. And so inner demons are causing them to do what they're doing, or other people are doing things to them that interfere with them being successful in life. And so they finally believe that bad things are going to happen to them all the time, and that's just the way it is, and there's nothing they can do to change it. I have one friend who is into this, and he uses astrology to convince me that, see, my astrology is so off here that there's nothing I could do to change that, nothing I could do to make my life better because I have a bad astrology. That's again another victim role. They have also a lot of depression. They have unmet expectations. They often have needs that others cannot or will not or cannot meet. They have lost all their boundaries in situations that where they need some self-protection. So they lash out like almost like a cornered animal, and they try to use one-up power to get their needs met by threatening others and trying to control others. I mean, that doesn't work. They pull in and they use what I call one-down power. They get weak and helpless and try to control people with their weakness and their helplessness. And so then the other emotion that is very common in the shadow victim is that they become disconnected from their own personal worth. They lose touch with their intrinsic worth, even as a victim. And as a victim, if the culture devalues them or devalues their behavior, they'll just accept this opinion about themselves. And at least it shows them that they belong to an elite class of other victims. And that becomes a form of identity to have other victims that they can talk to, and they can sit around and both of them complain about all the things that are wrong with other people and why that other people are causing their misery. And then the last one about power, I did mention that they tend to use either one up or one down power, and sometimes it's very interesting how quickly they can move from one to the other. If they don't feel that their one up power is working, they'll simply go to one down power and try to control other people by acting out in ways that make you feel as if they have no power at all. The poor thing, kind of thing. And so those are the kind of things that victim behavior is really leads to, and it's rampant in this country. And I think it's a serious problem. I do think that probably if we don't do something to change this, it could actually destroy our democracy, because democracy is not based on victimhood. It's based on citizens taking serious responsibility for their adult responsibilities and voting. And many of these victims don't vote because they feel like it doesn't count anyway. They're going to rig it, or they're going to steal the election or whatever, so they don't even bother voting. Other times they really are people who tend to not even respect the rights of other people, that they think that because they have a special category of being a victim, that gives them the right to really be hateful towards other religious groups, or other genders, or other sexual orientations. Somehow that they have, because they are such a victim of all these other people who are getting all these benefits, that they can then express their hatred towards them. And that's also a motivation for the mass shooter, who frequently is a mass shooter who has some axe to grind against Jews, for example. That's a big category. Or, of course, it was at one point blacks in our culture who were the targets, and then became women, and then became gays. And so there's that mental attitude of victimhood permeates the whole mass shooter group, and they fall into one of those, all those different types of victims. And until we can help get people out of the victim role, I wrote a book on this called "Breaking Free of the Drama Triangle and Victim Consciousness." And the drama triangle is a game that victims play, because it contains three roles. There's a rescuer, a persecutor, and a victim. And usually people try to become victims by either rescuing or persecuting. And so what keeps the game going is competition for getting to be the victim. And victims play this all the time. And you'll see it everywhere you go. You'll see the drama triangle in action. So somebody will try to do something for somebody else, and it will turn out not to work, and then they will be blamed, and then they'll feel like they've been victim. And they can say, well, I was just trying to help, too bad I didn't make it. You've heard that one before. So
many times,
yeah.
Many times.
So,
many times I've heard that one before.
Interesting. That book is our bestseller. I sell that book and any other book. So people are interested in what that's about. And in there's a lot of suggestions on how to get off the triangle. And one of them is never, ever, ever do anything for anybody they didn't ask for, or you didn't ask their permission first before you did it.
I might need to read that book, Barry. Just between us, I might need to read that book.
Everybody needs that book.
I definitely need to read that book. This has been an exceptional episode. And once again, tons of fantastic information. And I think that, we all sort of we can all fall into any one of those categories, right? Of the victim, and it just absolutely incredible stuff that we all need to hear and understand. Is there anything else that you want to talk about before we tell them what we have for them next week?
Well, no, I don't want to say any more. I've said it all.
All
All
right.
I want to say today about all that. And next time we're going to look at another belief that one of my top 20 badass, stupid psychological beliefs that gets people in trouble. So I won't tell you which one it is, but you'll you'll come next week to find out.
Awesome. I can't wait. I'll be here. Thank you guys so much for watching or listening and checking out the podcast. If you want to connect with Dr. Weinhold or get any of the reference material from this episode or any other episodes, please check out circle.org. Click the link in the description and you can find out all of that information. Thank you guys so much once again for checking out the show, and we'll see you next week.
See you, Ben.
Have a good one, Barry.
Bye.
For more information, please visit the Colorado Institute for Conflict Resolution and Creative Leadership at CICRCL.org or click the link in the show notes.